Well, hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. It's Kimberly and Tim Scott. We're glad to be here today on this beautiful Monday morning. Actually, it's May Gray here in San Diego, which is a thing. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before.
It's actually clearing up, so we're good.
Right, but May Gray and June gloom happens in San Diego, and if you've never been here, it's very disappointing to plan your vacations because
people come here in June and go, "What's the deal with the weather?"
Yeah. It's almost like, well, it's a marine layer situation.
It burns off about noon.
Yeah, about 11
noon.
O'clock. Sometimes
11:05.
Yeah, but it can be very disappointing because you're thinking sunny San Diego and it's instead dreary.
Right. Yeah, that's the weirdest thing, but it is because the mountains, I could tell you more about.
No, give us all the science, Tim. Dr. Scott.
What happens is, no, I really don't have anything.
Well, here we're going to jump into a new topic today, and it's going to be for this week and next week, and we're going to discuss 5 ways to handle false accusations. Sorry, I had a hard time getting that out. 5 ways to handle false accusations, and next week we'll be talking about 5 ways to handle true accusations.
Yes.
Now, this is going to be good because we've all at some point been accused of something we didn't do.
Who likes to be accused of something you didn't do?
Who likes to be accused of anything? I
don't want to be accused of things I did do, and I don't want to be accused of things I didn't do.
What I like about this topic, though, is it comes from both sides, and I think you'll learn, as we have learned through the process of developing these podcasts, that it's important how you deliver an accusation. It's important how you receive it.
Yeah, well, I think back of when we first got married, and here we've got these little kids in the house, and I had tools, and they weren't used to having tools because I don't think there was any tools around before my day. But anyway, I have these tools, and I've got it in a box, and I've got them somewhat organized, not like today. It's very organized because there's no kids around.
No kids in the house.
But I would go to get a tool, and it was gone. Mm-hmm. And a couple of those events.
Yes.
And I started thinking they're doing it all the time. Even now I blame them.
Our big joke is those dang kids.
Yeah,
those dang kids. They're always stealing my tools.
Those darn kids. Yes. Anyway.
And when they left the house and they would be missing and you didn't have them, it was like, who do I blame now? Yeah. And we're going to talk about that when you're accusing someone.
Falsely
accusing.
Which I've done a few times.
Well, I'll just tell a funny, it's funny now, but I remember as a child being accused, and I believe this happened like around 6 years old.
You were 6 years old?
I was about 6 years old. Mm-hmm. Wow. Very, very long time ago.
Yes,
but and many of you can probably recollect in your childhood of being falsely accused of something, but I was accused, and it's going to sound silly, of tearing a magazine in our household. And it started out as a joke because I had 2 brothers, one older, one younger, John and Jamie. And in my recollection, it became a joke because my dad said, "Hey, who tore this magazine?" And John and Jamie both said, "I didn't do it." And so they said, "I did it." And I said, "I didn't do it." And
they accused you of doing it.
They accused me of doing it. And so, of course, my dad's like, "Well, Kimmy, did you do it?" I said, "I didn't do it."
With the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses.
I didn't do it. And it actually ended up turning into a real crucial conversation real quickly because my dad wasn't concerned about the magazine. It became about who's telling the truth.
Yeah. And what, just to get clarity, what was the magazine?
I have no idea.
Was it a good magazine?
I have no idea.
Was it
probably a Better Homes magazine because my mom loved that.
Magazine.
It really wasn't the point.
An honest daughter.
But what I can tell you is that it became very serious. And to my dad, he believed my brothers. And to this day, I believe I didn't tear the magazine. So it became about him thinking I was lying and assuming, and even after me protesting, and being concerned about my integrity, that I was lying. And he took it to the point of disciplining me harshly with a spanking. And it sounds like a light event, but it actually was. It's something that we joke about to this day, and even my dad has brought up through the years before he passed this last year, because he still wanted to know, did I tear the magazine? And I said, Dad, if it makes you feel better, like, I'm over it. But I didn't.
He's not,
I didn't
evidently.
I didn't tear the magazine, and it obviously become a joke. It's a very small thing, but it is a great example of how in life we can be accused of something that we know we didn't do, and people can be accusing you, and the implications can be great and be carried on through the years.
Yeah, that's a problem. Matthew chapter 5 verse 11 says this: "Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account." And that's the key. Jesus saying, this is on my account, not because of evil you've done. "Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecute the prophets who were before you." And the whole point of that is, if you are suffering for the sake of the Lord, and you're being accused of things like Jesus did. He got accused of things that he didn't do, and
things he did do.
And things he did do that were true, but they believed they were heresy.
Right.
But that's when you're falsely accused, kind of what goes on in your mind, what goes on in your heart about that. Like Kimberly said, next week we'll talk about being accused of things you did do. But I think, we're going to give these 5 things. The first thing I think is important is just check yourself. And maybe, whether it's your actions or it's your motives, like do you feel overly defensive? And if you do, why do you feel defensive? Is there, maybe, did you set something up? Is there something that you did to make these accusations take place? Is there a pattern that people have seen in your life? Or is it just out of nowhere, just being accused for something you didn't do? Are you too concerned about people's respect of you, which is causing you to overreact when you are accused? Now, I know that's kind of harsh. When you're being falsely accused and we're making the assumption you actually did not do this thing, are you reacting in a way that is overly defensive, and what's going on psychologically with that?
Right. And I think what that actually can fuel the fire, because when you come off as really, a lot of histrionics and defensive, it actually kind of screams guilty behavior, whereas you may be triggered to an event in your past where you were misjudged. And so you're overreacting in the moment of something that's of much less.
Yeah. I worked for this cook. When I was a kid, I was a fry cook, and which means I burned the eggs. And
Babe, you make great eggs.
I do, but anyway, then the guy that I worked for was like the manager of the kitchen, and he couldn't find his knife. And everybody has their own knife. In fact,
his tools were missing.
His tools were missing. You got a knife because you could chop things up, whatever. And he was just furious, and he blamed me for taking his knife. And I said, I didn't take your knife. And he would always say he made false accusations. His name was Mark.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in 50 years. But anyway, Mark's making these accusations, and whenever I would get defensive, he goes, "Methinks he protests too much."
Right.
Throw a little Shakespeare at me and try to, look, I'm protesting because I'm innocent. No, I think you're overreacting because you did take it. And I remember when this happened, he was working on a preparation table, which is away from the grills and so forth. And I saw his knife sitting over there in the side. And I said, "Is that your knife over there where you left it?"
Take that.
I won the day.
Take that.
Yeah, but when you're falsely accused, that is a problem.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's important, even when you are falsely accused. This is number 2, is to avoid a persecution complex. In other words, that victimization or victim identity.
That could never happen.
Oh man, that becomes a real thing. And I feel like we are, in today's culture, we're walking on like a minefield of trying to make sure that we don't trigger someone and they're, victimization of something. Right. And I think there can be a healthy balance to that we don't want to overtly go out and just, walk all over other people's sensibilities with our opinions or whatever. But I also think we live in a dangerous time where there is such a victimization identity issue with people that they are so easily triggered that people aren't able to have honest conversations or healthy exchange of ideas and thoughts. And we've all known people that have victimization kind of identities. And to be honest with you, over time, they become the black hole of relationships.
Yeah, the problem is when you're a child and you're accused over and over and over again, and maybe you're rejected, and maybe you feel less than your siblings, your parents make you feel less than, or you were bullied, you are going to probably, naturally develop a defense mechanism. And one of the ways to do that is I'm a victim. Yeah. So I'm a victim that for some reason that puts me in a category. It makes me feel better about the situation. And, that self-pity. Right. Self-pity is a very kind of a grotesque thing.
Yeah. It feels like you're sucked into a tunnel that's never gonna release you. There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I love this. It says, "Let me never fall into the vulgar mistake of dreaming that I am persecuted whenever I am contradicted." And boy, is that ever poignant.
Somebody disagreeing with you is not an attack.
Right, exactly.
That is, we live in a world today where everybody is highly offended.
Yes.
And I get offended, and everybody gets offended. But when you coddle that kind of offense,
right.
You create a victim mentality. I think that Ralph Waldo Emerson's quote is so valid. Every time somebody contradicts you, does that mean you're being attacked? And, that's just it. And I like it. He said it was vulgar.
It's very freeing in relationships and even in casual relationships to be able to rest in the fact that you can love people and disagree.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're losing that somehow, that you can't disagree or be honest about feeling differently about something. And without them feeling, you've rejected me, I am not loved, and I'm a victim of this, It's dangerous territory.
Yeah. So when you're falsely accused, first thing we've said is check yourself, kind of check your own motives and actions and so forth. Secondly, avoid a persecution complex or that victim mentality or identity. The third one is this: let God vindicate you. It is so difficult when you're defensive, you want to defend yourself. And sometimes you're not in a position to defend yourself. And so you force that defense of yourself. And in forcing the defense of yourself, you're going to overreact to the accusations and make them larger possibly than what they really are. But this is what God said in Romans chapter 12, verse 17. Repay no one evil for evil. So if somebody treats you evil, it is self-justifying and intuitive that you would give them evil back. I mean, that just is, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, so you're going to get what you gave me. God says don't do that. But give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peacefully with all. Yeah. That doesn't mean you can live peaceably with all, but as much as it is in your power. It takes two people to be at peace. Yeah. You can't get, we're watching, Ukraine this last year. They don't want war, and yet they've got somebody that wants their land. And aggressive expansionism under false notions, and they want peace, but it takes two people to have peace. So what God recommends is as it depends on you. In other words, create an environment of peace. You can't secure it, but you can create an environment of peace. Beloved, never avenge yourself, but leave it to the wrath of God. One translation says, don't shorten the hand of God, the arm of God. God will avenge, and he may not do it in the way that you want, but he will do it in the way that is appropriate for your journey, what he wants for your journey. For it is written, God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. So, all of that to say that it is obviously very intuitive to defend yourself. And I've been accused of things in my life over the years. I remember when I was a young pastor, I was accused of something it was horrible. And I knew it was false, but my reputation was being hurt. And I didn't know how to resolve that. But thankfully, I had a board of elders who did it biblically, and they established every word, and which we'll talk about. But they established every word and realized the accusation was false. It was a false scenario that had been made up. When that happens, you realize, okay, God took care of that. What about the times where he doesn't, and your reputation suffers for something you didn't do? And you just have to accept that. Take here's a good recommendation from the Lord. Take the spoiling of your goods with joy. Your life is not about comfort. Your life is about honoring and glorifying God. So check yourself, avoid persecution complex, let God vindicate you.
And then number 4 is deal with the facts, not ad hominem, which is personal attacks not based on facts. It's really important that we establish evidence and kind of remove ourselves from the emotions and the things that the controversy that can go around a confrontation of a false accusation. And I love this passage in Matthew 18:16. It says, "But if he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses." And there we go. Again, we are establishing evidence because it's so easy to get sucked into the emotional attacks and defense mode in accusations. But really, it comes down to, like in your case, in that situation, having the elders step in and be able to say, well, let's deal with the actual facts here. Let's do some research. Let's dial down the emotions, and let's talk about what actually happened.
Yeah, a red flag went up when this accuser did not want to meet with me face to face with one of the elders. And so didn't have that face to face meeting, refused it. So they called a meeting with this person in to clarify the accusations which were made, were clarified. And then they said, we're going to bring in Tim. So I came in, and in the face to face, eye to eye, the accusations were dropped. That is not what happened. This is what happened, and actually admitted what had happened.
Yeah.
Without it doesn't even matter what it was, because you go through different things than I go through. You've been accused of different things. Believe me, I've done a lot of stupid things that I could be accused of. That wasn't one. So you got me, police officer pulls, do you know why I pulled you over? And I want to say, do you know why you pulled me over? Because if you don't, I'm not going to give you any hints. Why did you pull me over? Because you were speeding. Okay, yeah, but did you see that I drove through 3 red lights? Did you notice that? I'm not telling on myself. So, you get caught on one thing, or maybe caught on nothing. I think it's best, instead of worrying about your reputation, be concerned about being honest. And I don't, there's a lot of times where the facts are somewhat unclear. A while back, I was accused of certain things that I did do, and they were wrong. And yet there were mitigating circumstances. And the accusations that were made against me were made without me being able to explain the mitigating circumstances. So, those mitigating circumstances make a big difference. Like, why did this happen? And actually, what are the facts? What happens if you can't, well, not only context, but facts. Right. So there are facts that were misunderstood, and it made this kind of a bigger issue than it really was. And the reality was I was not able to defend myself because this individual or these individuals did not want to hear my side of the story. They made a conclusion that I was wrong and didn't want to hear the mitigating circumstances. And certainly it needed to be dealt with, but that's why Matthew 18:16 is so important, and that is establish evidence with 2 or 3 witnesses.
Right.
It is important to really know what's going on, not making assumptions about the facts, the data that you see. We're finding that out. Science is touted as the most important thing, and we're realizing, the science didn't change. What happened was our willingness to see what the science really says about COVID-19. So it's really been an interesting ride on what are the facts, what are mitigating circumstances, and what really is true, what really is the data.
Right.
The fifth one is this, fifth and final, is this. Know why you are suffering. And we read at the top of this that out of Matthew chapter 5, if you're persecuted for evil that you've done, that's a problem. But if you're persecuted for the name of Christ, that's a whole different story. If you suffer for the name of Christ, this is a blessing to you. You say, well, it doesn't feel like a blessing, but it is a blessing. And God sees it as something that is to be rewarded in the next life. When we stand before the Lord, those who are martyrs for Christ, they are blessed. So when we suffer for Christ, the name of Christ, it's a blessing. But if you suffer for sin, this is justice. And it's crucial for us to know the difference between the two.
It is.
Not just the blessing and the justice, but to know the difference between suffering for the name of Christ or suffering for our own sinfulness.
Right.
We're watching a kind of a docudrama on a certain church, doesn't matter what it is, but this church had taken and responded in evil ways to certain things. And when they received pushback from the government, they called it persecution. They weren't being persecuted for their faith. They were breaking the law.
Yeah.
And be very careful when you say, I'm suffering for Jesus' sake, when in reality you may be suffering for your own sinfulness.
Sinful consequences.
Yeah.
And sin, as we know, is forgiven when we request that from God and ask for forgiveness. But oftentimes he does not stop the consequences of our sinful behavior. And I've found, sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't, but often he allows it to play out because it's the very consequences of that sinful behavior that keep us from repeating the same behavior that gets us stuck in the same spot. So in that way, you have to be grateful. There's a reason why he's allowed me to feel this, because I made a bad choice and I'm experiencing the consequences of it, so I won't return to it. There's a passage in 1 Peter 4:12, and it says this: "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted for the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. But let none of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or an evildoer or as a meddler. Yet if anyone suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in that name. For it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And if the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the ungodly and sinners?"
That close is really powerful. But it's really powerful because when we suffer for Christ's sake, it is a blessing. It's a very clear statement that Peter writes in 1 Peter chapter 4, and I think we need to see it as that, and we need to see it as a blessing before the Lord. This final statement, I'll just camp on this a second. Verse 18, if the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the ungodly and the sinner? What he's saying is that we are scarcely saved. That is to say, it wasn't by our own doing. It was by God's grace And God is maintaining our salvation, not us maintaining our salvation. So what about people that don't have Jesus Christ?
Right.
That's why it's important to have Jesus Christ as your personal Savior. Well, those are 5 things that we recommend. Probably could come up with your own. 5 ways to handle false accusation. Check yourself. Avoid persecution complex. Let God vindicate you. Deal with facts, not ad hominem attacks. And know why you are suffering. Is it for the Lord or for your own failure? So I think that's a good way. That's helpful. That'll get you on the start to deal with false accusations. Next week at Hope Rescue, our Hope Rescue podcast, we'll be dealing with true accusations. That gets a little
How
more.
to deal with that.
That's a
5
little
ways.
tougher.
Yeah.
So hope you'll join us then. Thanks for listening in, and God bless you. Invite a friend that maybe needs this podcast that's going through the same kind of accusation. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.